Order, honorable members. Honorable members, order. The Secretary will read the order of the day.
Debate on the President's State of the Nation address.
Honorable members, I have received a copy of the President's address delivered at the joint sitting on the 8th of February 2024. The speech has been printed in the minutes of the joint sitting. I now call upon the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Somlomo obekekileyo usihlalo webhunga lamaphondo umongameli welilizwe usekela mongameli amalungu alendlu ebekekileyo wonke noluntu lonke loMzantsi Afrika nasheweta absheni molweni dumelang sanbonani good morning goeiemôre ndivumele somlomo ndiwarhuqe ndiwagawule ndiwarhuqa ngoba ndisenza ingabulazi cawu kule ntetho ibilincuthuma mazangwa kamongameli woMzantsi Afrika. Ewe ke kuba sikunyaka wolonyulo kusemqoka ukuba siqaphele into yokuba kuza kukhonya nomofu namhlanje kule nkundla. Elowo nalowo umofu athi ndikho. Izinto lorhulumente azenzileyo azizukwaziwa abantu bazawumfameka nangakumbi ingathi zange babe nawo amehlo ngaphambili okubona izinto ezenziweyo. Ingakumbi ulonyulo bambi baya kulo beyingqokelela yabaphikisi babagxeki. Bebethi inkazathi yento ebizwa i-moonshot ngoba kaloku kumele bekhuphe lo rhulumente wokhongolose esihlalweni. Ayindisithelanga ke malungu endlu ebekekileyo into yoba njengomshumayeli phaya kwinkonzo yamawisile. Intlungu zakaloku nje azinakufanekisa nobuqaqawuli obuza kutyhilwa. Ewe intlungu zikacimicimi ziyevakala. Ewe intlungu zentsolamsebenzi ziyevakala. Kodwa sithi intlungu zakaloku nje ingakumbi emva kokuba umongameli eye wasibeka isicwangciso wasithi thaca into yoba siyakwazi esikwenzileyo siyakwazi esingakwenzanga ngokweneleyo nazi izicwangciso zothatha uMzantsi Afrika suse kwiqongo elingentla. Uthe xa ke ukumbela umongameli wathi siza kuyiguqula njani na imeko yabantu bakowethu ngeli xesha. We as the ANC and the nation, we are inspired by the President's address last Thursday. The President has detailed the undertaking from 2023 SONA. The progress is inspiring, I repeat, the progress is inspiring, alongside with many challenges that we have outlined. Notwithstanding 2 years of COVID-19, this government has done all what it could do. The President gave an honest, balanced reflection of where we stand as a nation. The choice we face as a nation in this year's election is to reaffirm what we said we were going to do in 1994, implementation of a national program of transformation that will result to qualitatively changing the lives of the majority of our people who are black in general and women in particular, because they are in the majority. For the better and not to side with those who benefited from the historical legacy of the privilege, who seek to block the transformation at every turn, as they cling to preserve their wealth, their properties, as well as positions at the expense of the majority. Under the ANC, we will continue to take the country forward with all its challenges towards a better future for all. Under a conglomeration of opposition parties, they will entrench wealth amongst the few. Under them, poverty and inequality will grow. I-Moonshot Pact yimbutho yabagxeki abadibene ngokuzama uMzantsi Afrika wocalucalulo usithatha basibuyisele emva. During SONA, the president accounted to the nation.
Order, man. Honorable Hlengwa, please, man. Honorable members, please don't drown the speaker.
On Thursday evening, the president accounted to the nation on the implementation not only on SONA 2023 commitments, but also on the 5-year plan, the medium-term strategic framework. To those who say nothing has been done, let me remind you, because you have political dementia. Mandini kumbuzeke, 14 billion mamelani had been allocated to fight crime and corruption over the next 3 years. 4,000 arrests have been made for all those who have damaged critical infrastructure. 70 arrests for construction extortion, and over 3,000 arrests for illegal mining. Over 1.7 million work and livelihood opportunities for unemployed South Africans have been created through the presidential employment stimulus. 45,000 participants have been placed in the National Youth Service, and 51,000 participants have been employed by 28 implementing partners under the Social Employment Fund. Ngubani ke ufuna ukuma apha azoteketa atha kwenziwa nganto? Kukho abakhalayo, kukho abalilayo, kukho abajedayo. Huna libalang, huna libabokolang, batla yemang mona, batla bokolla, bejweta besita khange kwenziwe nto. The matters outlined in SONA has clear to say on economy, how do we grow our economy, how do we create jobs, reducing poverty and tackling corruption. We are bound as public representatives of the people to ensure that the program we adopt in our organization are for the people, of the people, with the people, because we work with people and speak to their needs. The NC's January 8th statement is very clear that we are more determined this year to succeed in building a better life for all and become very resolute about bringing together broad democratic forces in the country. Ingxelo nkcukacha manani census 2022 iyavuma kuba igxathu elikhulu urhulumente ulenzile, kodwa njengoko elenzile imicelimingeni mininzi iyakhula kuba uluntu luyakhula. Iziphumo zona ziyasivuma ukuba eneneni impilo nobomi babantu bakuthi ukusukela mhla usathatha ulawulo yohlukile. Ewe zikhona into esisigqwalisayo, amachaphaza asigqwalisayo, njengokuba kwehla komgangatho wenkonzo eziya ebantwini bakowethu, ulawulo oluheshe kwezinye izigaba zorhulumente. Siyazazi ezo nto, and urhulumente onyanisekileyo uyathetha nge-challenges ajongene nazo. Therefore, we do not have to be held at hostage in this debate by political parties that will come with sound bites but lack the evidence. The census 22 is a clear evidence. Ukwenyuka kwamaxabiso kanobomu akhwitsha kwiimpula zikaLjaca ekubeni uqoqosho lungenyuki, kodwa siyawabona amaxabiso nempilo yoluntu iyonyuka. Luyalwenzakalisa uluntu. Urhulumente ke uyazivelela zonke ezinkalo. Esisiheleku sikacimicimi wombane yeyona nto iqhorha uqoqosho kunye noluntu lwelizwe lakuthi. Sithi ke urhulumente makawuqonde into yoba noko lo mvambo awunyamezeleki njengokuba siwubonile ngomgqibelo sisiya kwisigaba sesithandathu. Sinethemba ke into yoba xa ke imsima kule ndawo uminister ojongane nalo mba uzawucacisa ncakasana. Kodwa ke naxa kunjalo ithemba lona likhona ukuba ziyalandelelwa ezi zinto. What we need to honestly acknowledge is that corruption has had a devastating impact on the ability of our state-owned enterprises to function for the purposes that they were meant for. We have just had another manager arrested in NCOP on the allegation of a 1 million. And we know that whenever they get arrested, we get blamed. Who must be blamed when criminals are arrested? And they are arrested through the ANC government. We also want to request our communities that when they see those who are destroying our infrastructure, they must alert police and those people must be brought to book. As the parliament of the people, we take a responsibility in contributing to the health of the state of the nation. The Judicial Commission of Inquiry, known as SONA Commission, and the report of the President, which were referred to Parliament for consideration, have been acted upon. The constant narrative that Parliament has done nothing can only be said by those who consciously gone to sleep, who do not want to see the process of assigned sections of the report given to the committees and how the Ethics Committee have engaged itself and pronounced on some of the findings. The work will continue within the purview of Parliament. As the majority party of the ANC, we lead in this responsibility. And this responsibility of passing the legislation is about transformation of this country. To date, we have passed 88 bills, all expression of the ANC policy that shape the direction of the country and influence decision-making. We have done this whilst we have to mourn 23 ANC MPs who passed on the greatest number compared to any term of parliament. They died with their boots and heels on. May their soul rest in peace. Whilst the ANC is seeking to unite the nation, addressing the national grievances, promoting unity and diversity, and driving social cohesion, we are confronted with acts of racism carried out by groups of whites who cling to an old apartheid flag that is outlawed, swear allegiance to a past that was discriminating and declared as a crime against humanity. That cannot be allowed in our democracy. They desire to undermine constitutional democracy and break down ongoing efforts of nation building and social cohesion. These acts of racism only serve to reopen the wounds of the past and bring about a response. We have been talking about this for almost 30 years.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Sorry, your time is up.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, fellow South Africans. Mr. President, thank you very much for sharing with us the story of Tinswalo, the child of democracy. There is no doubt that the South Africa that she grew up in after 1994 was a hopeful place. It was built on the South African dream, the promise that her life would be better than the life of her parents and that her children's lives would be better still. What the President did during his address was to tell us the story of Tinswalo's start in life during the 1990s and 2000s. It was far from perfect, but it was a time of hope and possibility. But Tinswalo's life story does not end after childhood. Today, she is a 30-year-old woman. She has entered the next phase of her life as a wife, a mother, and a provider. Over the past decade, she has watched in growing horror as the dream of her childhood has been betrayed. Tinswalo's social consciousness started to develop during high school as she watched the ANC elevate a man accused of corruption and rape to the highest office in the land. She grew steadily more disillusioned when she found out that 246 million rand of public money was used to build a fire pool and a chicken coop at the president's home in Nkandla, even as many people around her fell deeper and deeper into poverty. And she watched as the ANC members of this House protected him. In 2015, she graduated from a TVET college. A year later, Tinswalo realized that she was not alone in her growing unease about the future. In 2016, she watched as many voters abandoned the ANCs in major cities. And she too started to think about changing her vote at the next election. You see, she just couldn't stomach the idea of voting for the ANC after it had unleashed Jacob Zuma, state capture, and load shedding on her country. But in 2018, her spirits lifted. Tinswalo was delighted when the ANC ejected Zuma from the presidency in February of that year. In fact, Mr. President, in 2019, Tinswalo voted for you. Like many others across the country, she did so for one reason, because she believed that you, Mr. President, would restore South Africa to the path it was on when she was a child. That you would rescue the South African dream. But tragically, her hopes were shattered soon after. In the same year that Mr. Ramaphosa was elected, Tinswalo lost the first and only job she had because the load-shedding crisis that he had promised to end shut down the factory where she worked. She was forced to move into a tin shack on the outskirts of the city, returning to the same life of poverty she thought she had left behind for good. And she has been unemployed ever since. In 2021, Tinswalo joined the growing group of South Africans who simply refused to vote. She was simply too angry after the Ramaphosa administration broke all of the lofty promises it had made in the New Dawn, including by protecting the president's comrades implicated in state capture. And sadly, things went from bad to much, much worse. In 2022, her father became one of the 75 people who are murdered every single day in South Africa. He was killed by a loan shark from whom he was forced to borrow money because the Transnet failure had shut down the transport job he had had since Tinswalo was a baby. For Tinswalo, it felt like her whole world had come crashing down. She'd lost her livelihood, she'd lost her home, and her father. Her South African dream lay in ruins. Yet, amid the darkest hour of her life, light entered when she gave birth to a daughter of her own. Called SONA, She was Tinswalo's greatest gift. This miracle of new life gave her a newfound determination to fight, to rescue her South African dream. You see, Tinswalo is done waiting for the ANC to change. She has accepted that it never, ever will. She acknowledges the opportunities she got as a young person, which her parents never had. But she now thinks about the future of her own family above all else. You see, Mr. President, like millions of other South Africans, Tinswalo cannot afford to live in the past. She must survive in the reality of what South Africa is in 2024, not what it was in 1994. When she is reminded of her hopeful childhood, it fills her with sadness for the childhood that waits SONA. When she remembers how her family moved from a shack into a formal house with running water and electricity when she was a young girl, it hurts and shames her that she has ended up back in a shack with no water and constant power cuts as a grown woman. The memory of how excited she was at her graduation is completely turned to anger when she realizes that she has been unemployed for twice as long as it took her to complete her qualification. For the hard truth, Mr. President, is that when Tinswalo listened to the President on Thursday, it did not make her grateful, as he may have hoped. It made her sad and it made her angry. Because whether you like it or not, Mr. President, you have betrayed Tinswalo's South African dream. Hearing the President speak without acknowledging that the same people who once gave her the permission to dream are the same people who have now shattered those dreams. And this has only made Tinswalo more resolute than ever that the time for change has come. She knows that the only reason she had a better start in life than her parents did was because her parents stood up and fought for change when it was required. The South African dream she tasted as a child did not come about by accident. Because dreams only come true when we fight to make them true. Tinswalo now knows that it is her turn to fight for change by removing the ANC from power. To rescue SONA from the nightmare that the ANC is condemning her to grow up in. And it's not only Tinswalo. In Eldorado Park, Auntie Fatima is ready to fight to rescue her South African dream so that her children may be free from gangsters and drug lords. In Citrusdal, Farmer Johan is ready to fight to rescue his South African dream so that he can spare his children from the indignity of watching the fruits of their labor rot at the dockside of a failing port. In London, Sipho, the engineer, is ready to fight to rescue his South African dream so that his children can grow up in a country he had to leave in order to find opportunity, but which he still loves deeply. Watching the President stand at this podium and sing the praises of a country that no longer exists made all South Africans even more resolute than ever before that this is the year we must remove the ANC from power. When the ANC says that 2024 is the year that we must defend our freedom, they are right. We must defend our freedom. We must defend it from the ANC. Because the people of South Africa know that in 2024, the single biggest threat to our freedom and to the South African dream is the African National Congress. A labour market where 7 out of 10 young people cannot find work is an existential threat to our freedom. Load shedding and water shedding are existential threats to our freedom. Rampant crime is an existential threat to our freedom. Childhood malnutrition is an existential threat to our freedom. Corruption and state capture that literally steals food from the mouths of the poor is an existential threat to our freedom. A president who protects and shields his deputy president despite Zuma-level allegations is an existential threat to our freedom. So know this, every time the lights go out, every time the taps run dry, every time criminals attack us in our homes, every time a small business shuts down, every time a child dies of hunger, it reminds us all of the dream that we have lost. But I have news for the President and his party. The people of South Africa are determined to take our dream back. And this year, the people of South Africa will rescue the South African dream by using the most powerful weapon that they have, and that is their vote. Mr. President, you recently made a baseless and dangerous claim that mysterious foreign agents were wanting to bring about regime change in South Africa. Let me give you this assurance. What is coming your way in this election is not regime change by foreign actors. It is democratic change by the people of South Africa. Voting out a failing government is not a threat to democracy. Voting out a failing government is the greatest vindication of democracy. And it is the only way we can all rescue our South African dream. In 1994, the dream that we all believed in was that the lives of this generation would be better than our parents. But in 2024, the nightmare that confronts us is that the lives of our children could be far, far worse than our own. And I don't say that abstractly. I too am a father of 3 young daughters, and I too have great dreams for them. But like Tinswalo and millions of other citizens, I too am fearful about the future of my children, of your children, of our children in this country. And that is why South African people all across the country must now rise to the call of history in this election. No matter how old you are, over the past 30 years, we have all grown up as democracy's children. We have learned, sometimes painfully, that in democracy, it only really works when we use our votes to hold those in power accountable. In 2024, the people of South Africa will vote against those who've diverted South Africa from the promise of 1994 through their corruption, their greed, and their incompetence. And they will vote for those who can practically restore South Africa to this path of promise through a proven track record of delivery, of good governance, and an ability to fix what the ANC has broken. Last week, I announced the DA's blueprint to rescue South Africa. Within the first 100 days, as the anchor tenant of a new multi-party government, we will introduce the most comprehensive legislative reform agenda seen in a generation. We will rescue South Africa through concrete reforms and legislation, not hollow talk and empty promises, reform and legislation. And these reforms and legal challenges and legal changes will introduce within the first 100 days and will aim at the 5 following key priority areas. 1, fixing the institution of Parliament so we can restore it as an engine room of reform. Secondly, ending load shedding for all South Africans by embracing privatization in the private sector. 3, abolishing cadre deployment in favour of merit-based appointments and a capable state. 4, halving the rates of violent crime, including murder, attempted murder, and gender-based violence. And 5thly, growing the economy while creating jobs and protecting social grants. If you had any doubt that the DA was the party to defeat the ANC, you only need to look at the ruling of the Constitutional Court yesterday, which now compels the ANC to hand over the complete records of the Cadre Deployment Committee, dating back all the way to January 2013, when Mr. Ramaphosa became its chairman under Mr. Zuma. Now, the DA expects the ANC, in its newfound love for the rule of law, to abide by this ruling, to expose its dirty cadre secrets, and how Mr. Ramaphosa's committee laid the foundation for state capture and collapse that we have witnessed across the country. And let me be clear, if they try and subvert the rule of law, we will make sure that they are jailed for contempt of court in exactly the same way that Mr. Zuma was. So, mark your calendars. In just 4 days' time, we will find this president's fingerprints all over cadre deployment and state capture, the very thing he has spent the last 6 years telling us that he was against. My fellow South Africans, Tinswalo, Fatima, Johan, and Sipho all voted for different political parties over the years. All of them, just like us, had different lived experiences. But what we are all united on, here and now, is that things cannot go on the way that they are. And what we all agree is the urgent need to rescue South Africa, and it's the South African dream, before it's too late. That is why, in 2024, for the very first time, Tinswalo, Fatima, Johan, and Sipho will vote for the same party, for the one party that has a proven track record of getting things done and a proven ability to rescue South Africa and restore the dream that they all share, and that party is the Democratic Alliance. They will not do so because they believe and share everything. They will do so because they agree about one thing. And that one thing is that without jobs, without electricity, without running water, without an end to cadre deployment, without an honest government that serves the people and not the politicians, without functioning schools and working hospitals, all of our children will be doomed to lives far worse than our own. For we are South Africans, and as South Africans, we are all in this together. So let's be honest with each other. This election is not about restoring the dream of 1994. It's about keeping the dream alive. And when you come down to it, there's only one real choice in this election. Either our great South African dream dies if the ANC comes back to power with radical coalition partners like the EFF and other destructive populists, or we rescue the South African dream through a new multi-party government with the DA at its heart. The truth is that there's only one way to rescue Tinswalo's dream. There's only one way to rescue our South African dream, and that is by drawing our crosses next to the DA. In this election, don't vote out of fear. In this election, if you want to rescue our South African dream, vote for the DA. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, I now invite the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Order, Honourable Members. May I just make an appeal before the Honourable Minister speaks? Honourable members, andifuna ukubiza amagama. Honourable members, please, man, let's allow the speakers to address us and let's not drown them. Allow them to be audible. From where we are, it's difficult for us to hear when you are loud. I mean, there's no reason for you not to heckle, but you can do it in a very organized and decent manner. For now, honourable members are very loud. Honourable members are very loud. Thank you very much, honourable members. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker of the National Assembly. Ms. Nosviwe Mapisa Ngakula, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Amos Masondo, His Excellency, the President of the Republic, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, honorable members. One thing that is important is that there are two sources of knowledge, is experience and studying a subject. Now, if you don't do both, anything you say is an imagination. I can assure you that you don't study, you don't experience, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, let me start by reminding beneficiaries of apartheid, denialists, and apologists on what we've been dealing with over the past 30 years. Following the work of the architect, Dr. Malan, when consolidating apartheid government, the apartheid master artisan, Hendrik Verwoerd, said, "We are building a system with deep roots that no future government will ever undo." Many people who criticize our government, including some in this parliament, argue that we must have done everything within 30 years, never refer to atrocities of apartheid government. They conveniently forget that this country was colonized for 342 years, of which 46 were under apartheid. That is what we are swimming against, and we must continue swimming against that reality. It's a reality we must swim against, and throughout this period, the bastion of apartheid was the mining sector, which was the roughest in terms of implementing apartheid policies. I experienced it. I couldn't put my hand on a blasting certificate because it was reserved for a scheduled person, which was a term to tell a white person. Since South Africa attained democracy in 1994, the government efforts were aimed at achieving a dream of transformation, with a particular focus on ownership, on management, and procurement. Hence, we enacted the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act in 2002 and introduced the Mining Charter in 2004. During the State of the Nation address, the President reported on the work done to transform the economic sectors, more so the mining sector. Unfortunately, some members of this House cannot see progress, even if it hits them in the face. They can't see it, it hits them in the face, they can't feel it, they can't see it. Now, when we did research 2 years ago, which is the function of studying, we discovered that at the 9 major mining companies that were studied, each one of them didn't have less than 50% of management structure being black. That is research information, it's not thumb-sucking. Two, we did see that in procurement initiative created a lot of business people who are not necessarily seen as part of the mining sector, but have developed on the back of mining. Some ultra-reptarians in and outside the House questioned the figure black ownership in mining sector as quantified by the President, with one of them suggesting that it is less than 10%. I would help it would help for people to do research of these things before they express their opinion. One, if they spent time and studied the industry, they would have known that if you talk coal, only one major company is white. The majority of them are black. Even if you take Siriti, you take Tungela, you take Exaro, the list goes on and on. All of them will not be under 30%, will not be under 10%. They would know that in the manganese sector, if you talk of the African rainbow mineral, Kalahad Manganese, Tsimbintle Holdings, and many others, black ownership in mining companies is a long list. I can break it down and even go to gold, where ARM is dominant, where Harmony is dominant, and the main shareholder is ARM. In the PGMs, Nkwe Platinum, Ivanhoe, Palaburo Mining Company have considerable black ownership representation. So when you quantify numbers, you don't do something that says less than 10% without doing quality assessment of what is available there. Now, if you look at all these companies, you can see that there is practical progress being made. If one adds this and say it is less than 10%, I cannot even talk of their mathematics. I can only talk of their arithmetic being flawed. Now, cognizant of the fact that mines are born out of exploration, we have just launched an exploration fund. It's never late to do the right thing, unless you are a beneficiary of other things earlier. If you have never been a beneficiary, it's never late. We'll continue doing the right thing because the future is ahead of us. We can inherit the past, but we must build the future. And if you don't know what it is to be under apartheid, you are a beneficiary. You will never know the beauty of future. You will only imagine the beauty of the past. Now, it is therefore important that we invest in exploration so that the future of this very important sector continues to be bright. We firmly believe that South Africa holds significant quantities of minerals needed for the transition from high carbon emission to low carbon emission, which informs the view of our mining industry is a sunrise industry. We have got the critical minerals. They are in this country. We must discover them and we must exploit them. Having appointed a service provider for design, implementation, and maintenance of mining license and cadastral system, we are optimistic that this system will soon help us accelerate the processing and prospecting of the mining industry. Let me, because of the pressure of time, go to the contribution of mining for the future of the energy sector. You know, it's very good, President, that you wrote a speech for Mr. Steenhuisen. He didn't have to write a speech, you wrote it for him. He only talked about Dintswalo. Now, despite the obstacles of apartheid government-guided constitution, this government continues to strive for a national democratic society in which people enjoy equal rights and equal access to basic services. Like Dintswalo, which you wrote a speech for Mr. Steenhuisen about, have access to electricity today. Since 2019, we have successfully connected 776 households of electricity, taking us to over 92% of South Africans having access to electricity. Now, if you never have access to electricity, you will shout load shedding. You will even forget that in your own house, when there is a box and you load it with a number of electrical appliances, it trips. When you take access to electricity from 34 to 92, you are loading that infrastructure. And you must appreciate it and work on the load shedding. Now, as part of the concerted effort of secure, reliable energy supply, government introduced independent power producers procurement program. Since the launch in 2011, The DMRE has, through the IPP office, procured a total of 13,266.9 megawatts. It has procured that from 140 IPPs whose technology are based on renewables, diesel and battery storage. Of this capacity, 7,362.2 megawatts was from 95 IPPs who are currently connected to the grid and supplying the much needed electricity. But it puts to our discussion whether you can do renewables without base load. A combination of the two is what we require to deal with the challenges facing us. But there's ill-informed pressure put by the DA that go for renewables, switch off coal, go to renewables, is actually ill-informed because it says destroy base load, go to renewables. Intermittent behavior of this is not taken into account because it is fashionable and nice to do so. Now, the remaining 145 IPPs, a combined capacity of 5,942 megawatts, are either in construction or preparing to reach commercial close, and therefore, under the administration, 5,939 megawatts from 46 IPPs were procured, resulting in a number of them being on the grid or at various stage of development. Let me go to NERSA has concurred with the Minister of Electricity, Mr. Ramokgopa, that 2,500 nuclear capacity has to be connected. It is gazetted. It is on the stage of being launched. It is Maylam, who is a shadow energy minister, who can be a disaster if he can be a minister. Now, it's a problem. So the reality of the matter is that is where we are. We are going to be undoing apartheid system against the drive by many in the opposition. In conclusion, let me refer a little bit, Honorable President, to what they celebrate, called cadre deployment, whatever. What it has done, it has changed a situation where every DG was a white male in 1994. It has changed the reality where every judge was a white male, where every mayor was a white male. The cadre development has changed that reality. So, run to court, do everything, but the reality of the matter is, we will do it. You will get your report, but we'll continue deploying people who are capable. That's it. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you. Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable, a member of the EFF, Honorable, there is no name? Okay. I now invite the member, Honorable Shabisa. Honorable Shabisa.
The Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Your Excellency, the President, and Honorable members. As I speak in this debate, I feel the absence of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the founder of the IFP and South Africa's trusted voice of reason. For 29 years, Prince Buthelezi spoke in this debate, giving us the real state of the nation. In honor of his leadership, let me echo his final warning to the ANC. He quoted from the very first state of the national address to a democratic South Africa when Madiba said, open quote, "The government I have the honor to lead is inspired by the single vision of creating a people-centered society free from want, hunger, deprivation, ignorance, suppression, and fear," close quote. 3 decades later, that vision has disappeared. As Principal Telezi told us, if the promise of South Africa is truly still alive, it is thanks to the resilience of our people. But how far is this government willing to test our resilience? They are playing with a dangerous game. I am afraid, Honorable President, that 1 year after this sober warning, our people's resilience is gone. Every day, in every corner of our country, our people live with instinctive understanding that what is being done by the government of the day is wrong. We are left with this feeling which we once had before. My generation grew up with a government that showed nothing but contempt for the struggling people of South Africa. We entered democracy full of hope for change. And in these first years of a government for the people, of the people, by the people, we were finally going in the right direction. As a government of national unity, tore down every discriminatory law and replaced it with what is good and fair and just, we believe that South Africa will continue moving from strength to strength. We witnessed how Principal Telezi, as the Minister of Home Affairs, tabled landmark legislation that is widely considered the highest watermark of migration policy and law. We saw South Africa's doors being open to skills and investment, a balance being struck between human rights and national security, and our interests being aligned with our values and international obligation. Under the IFP Minister of Correctional Services, our prisoners became more than centers of punishment on the principle that rehabilitation for safe reintegration into society is essential to stop the revolving door of crime. Under an IFP Minister of Arts and Culture, Science and Technology, the National Arts Council was birthed, and the Pan-South African Language Board, I'm talking about South Africa, during the Government of National Unity, the South African Heritage Resources Agency, and the National Heritage Council. Technical colleges were supported to increase innovation among SMMEs, and Women in Science program recruited young women to career path in science and technology. Between 1994 and 1999, when our country was led by the Government of National Unity and KwaZulu-Natal was governed outright by the IFP, our country flourished. Reviewing the first 10 years of democracy, this is what the IMF said, and I quote, "South Africa has made impressive gains in stabilizing the economy and laying a firm foundation for higher economic growth and broad-based improvement in living standard. The public finances have been strengthened significantly. Interest rates have been lowered, and inflation has been brought firmly under control. The rate of the economic growth has more than doubled on average since the end of apartheid." Close quote. Honorable President, this is the South Africa you would have us remember, but that South Africa no longer exist. 20 years into democracy, after the ANC had enjoyed unfettered power for 10 years, the IMF review was far less glowing. They said, I quote, "Living standards have improved substantially in the first 20 years of democracy, but in recent years, the economy has underperformed peers. The outlook is lackluster, with low growth, high unemployment, and elevated twin deficit," close quote. 30 years into democracy, the IMF could only shake its head and say, open quote, "The country has faced rolling blackouts after years of mismanagement. The elevated public debt level, one of the highest amongst emerging markets, limits the government's ability to meet growing social and development needs. Persistently high food and energy prices have pushed up inflation. Stabilizing the country's debt will require reducing the government wage bill and transfer to state-owned enterprise," close quote. Honorable President, listen to this one closely, because that is where the lie is exposed. You cannot point to 1994 as a measure of how far we have come under the ANC government, because the ANC did not govern this country alone in between 1994 and 2024. The strong and stable democracy that was built from 1994 to 1999 was built by the Government of National Unity, a government in which the IFP served from 1999 to 2004. As the good work continued, the IFP remained in cabinet. It was only when the ANC gained unfettered power that government began to falter. Let us look at the facts. After years of negative growth, in 1994, South Africa's GDP began growing at a steady pace under the Government of National Unity. But when the ANC took over, the President laments that the global financial crisis brought an end to a decade of strong growth. What he doesn't mention is that the decade after the global financial crisis and even before COVID, our country was still stagnant at a growth rate of just 0.26%. Over the last 8 years, foreign investors have dumped South African stocks to the tune of 900 billion rand. What about unemployment? Under the Government of National Unity, the unemployment rate decreased year upon year, every single year. Indeed, for 10 years, while the IFP held seats in cabinet, unemployment consistently decreased. But over the next 20 years, the ANC family in power, unemployment leaped up to staggering 15%. When it comes to crime, for the first 10 years of democracy, the crime rate decreased annually for 8 years out of 10 years. By 1999, after 5 years of national government unity, crime had decreased by 11%. Then the ANC took over, and by 2021, crime had increased by 23%. The ANC is moving in the wrong direction. Stop looking for the pen to sign the NHI bill into law. On record, the IFP supports universal access, health access, but the NHI bill as it stands is a recipe for disaster. The last SONA of the sixth administration was not about South Africa we live in. South Africa is in crisis. Our country is in the autopilot mode, as President Mbeki confirmed. Tinswalo's story is not the story of today's youth. Unlike Tinswalo, 41% of our youth is unemployed. Thousands of NSFAS beneficiaries are still sitting at home with their degrees and diplomas with no jobs. Doctors were protesting just yesterday. Their dreams are fading away. Millions of our children of democracy still live in shacks and informal settlement with no clean water, toilets, or refuse removal. Their only connection with Tinswalo is that she too sits vulnerable in the dark on stage 6 load shedding. The ANC's failures are unforgivable. Consider what was achieved in just 10 years under the IFP premiers in KwaZulu-Natal. Under the IFP premier, antiretrovirals were rolled out for free of charge for the first time, turning the tide on the HIV/AIDS pandemic. The IFP set the trend for the whole country, enabling the Constitutional Court to instruct an ANC government to do in South Africa what the IFP was doing in KwaZulu-Natal. That is how the IFP serves the vulnerable. By contrast, in January 2023, the ANC fed millions of learners with rotting food because of corruption in school nutrition program, and they failed to distribute 48,000 blankets despite procuring them fraudulently for 22 million. That is how ANC treats vulnerable. Under an IFP government, Itala Bank provided loans to emerging farmers and entrepreneurs, funding countless small businesses. But under ANC, Itala Bank is closing. So, Honorable President, do not keep telling us of what the ANC has done since 1994. Again, the ANC did not liberate South Africa nor build it alone. It was a number of political parties involved. The ANC and the ANC alone gave us state capture. They gave us load shedding stage 6. The ANC gave us 9 wasted years. The ANC gave us close to 8 million unemployed people of South Africa. Let us not pull wool over our people's eyes and pretend that the ANC is the only party that can protect South Africa and do what is best for her. The ANC only serve ANC. How many MPs and ministers implicated in the state capture have been taken to task? How many? Honorable President, you have put party before country. The damage done to South Africa is huge. Another 5 years under the ruling party is hard to contemplate. The IFP stands ready to be an alternative government to save South Africa. Honorable President, you must be ready for the change of government. Honorable President, my generation did not get any solution in the SONA you delivered. As a result, unlike Tinswalo, the people of South Africa and our youth are disillusioned by the ANC, for they have lived through the destruction of our country at the hands of the ANC government. Therefore, 2024 is our 1994. We will do what we did in 1994.
Order.
We will remove the government that has failed our people.
Order, Honorable Member, your time is up.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member. I now invite the Honorable Deputy Chair of the National Council of Provinces.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the President and the Deputy President of the Republic, House Chairpersons, whips of the whip of the majority party, and whips of other political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, Ben Okri once said, and I quote, "The most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering." Close quote. This debate takes place when South Africa celebrates a poignant moment in history as we reach the 30-year milestone of the country's constitutional democracy. Parliament's strategic objective has been to create a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic society. And our primary mission has been centered on mobilizing all classes and strata that objectively stand to gain from the success of the cause for social and economic change. In this context, Parliament gives expression to its mandate as informed by the precepts of transformative constitutionalism, which the former Chief Justice of South Africa aptly asserts as being an enabling instrument to give expression to the country's transformation agenda. In his paper titled Transformative Constitutionalism, Justice Langa further makes reference to the post-amble of the interim constitution, which he asserts also expresses the pinnacle objective of South Africa's constitution, where he asserts that the underlying imperative of our constitution is to provide, and I quote, "a historic bridge between the past of a deeply divided society, characterized by strife, conflict, untold suffering and injustice, and a future founded on the recognition of human rights, democracy, a peaceful coexistence and development opportunities for all South Africans, irrespective of color, race, class, belief or sex," close quote. Honourable President, in fact, when I stand here, ek dink nou maar net, ons moet nie hier na toe kom omdat ons wil verkiesing kom baklei nie. Ons moet hier na toe kom omdat ons die mandaat van die mense uitvoer. En die mandaat van die mense is om seker te maak, Parliament hou die executive accountable. En soos ons dink, as we reflect on this 30-year milestone of our constitutional democracy, we must bear in mind what we have inherited. We inherited a system that had inflicted far-reaching damage and oppression to millions of South Africans on the basis of race. We must therefore observe this 30-year milestone in the context of the progress made as a result of our rights-based agenda, which has been put in motion by our constitutional democracy under the ANC. These rights collectively represent our departure from a painful, oppressive, and discriminatory past, as we lean in towards creating a new South Africa from the ruinous past of colonialism and apartheid. During this first 30 years of our democracy, Parliament had to deal with laws that oppress our fairness and equality. We have repealed that oppressive and discriminatory apartheid laws and enacted laws to overhaul the functioning of the broader state machinery. These actions have helped to solidify our democracy and assisted us to make great strides towards realizing our country's democratic goals. Furthermore, the efficacy of parliamentary business, particularly through the committees and debates in applying procedural processes and protocols, particularly as outlined in the Constitution and in the rules of both houses, have significantly improved throughout the years. Though through plenary discussions, questions, motions, and resolutions, members of Parliament continue to actively and robustly participate in policy debates while unpacking matters of material importance of the nation. Our improved coordination with the executive has also ensured the attendance of ministers in the sitting of both houses when required, leading to increase in executive responses to questions for oral and written reply. Agbare lede, Tydens COVID-19 het parlement bewys dat ons deur die gebruik van tegnologie tot 'n groot mate kon beantwoord aan die uitdaging wat dit gebied het in ons werk. 2 weke gelede, tydens ons wetgewende summit, noem professor SONA Fikeni iets baie belangrik. Sê die wat mense observe van parlement is dat elke party staan op die platform vir sy eie party. Ons werk nie vir 'n gesamentlike Suid-Afrikaanse identiteit nie. Die enigste tyd wat ons vir onsself identifiseer as Suid-Afrikaners is wanneer die Springbokke die wêreldbeker wen. Wanneer Bafana goed doen in die AFCON. Wanneer ons atlete goed doen in die Olimpiese spele. Dit is die tyd wat ons onsself identifiseer as Suid-Afrikaners. Daar is foute volgens ons almal. En die ANC as 'n regerende party is die eerste een om die foute en die tekortkominge te erken. En dit moet ons sê, ons staan hier en regverdig onsself vir dinge wat in die verlede gebeur het nie. Ons staan ook hier en regverdig onsself. Ons sal ook nie onsself verdedig as ons 'n visie het vir die toekoms om 'n beter lewe vir alle Suid-Afrikaners aan te bied. Suid-Afrikaners het die reg op hulle eie werklikheid. En as iemand hier staan en die president wil antwoord op sy storie van Tintswalo, dan moet jy hem antwoord op die werklikheid van Tintswalo. Want elke mens ervaar sy eie werklikheid. En Daniel se werklikheid is die John se werklikheid. Daarom kan jy nie iemand anders se werklikheid ontken. As iemand vir jou sê, ek het onder 'n boom gebly. Ek het onder 'n boom gebly. Ek het nou 'n erf met water en toegang tot elektrisiteit. Ek het in 'n sinkhuis gewoon. Ek het nou toegang tot 'n RDP-huis. Load shedding is nie die einde van die aarde nie. En ek, president, is een van die mense wat voel, sodra jy van load shedding praat, dan begin hulle om jou te saboteer. Ons sal moet iets doen aan die sabotasie. Ons sal moet iets doen aan die sabotasie. Definitief. Nie Spoetla het nie alle antwoorde nie. Maar Suid-Afrikaners weet, ons kom van 'n verlede af, waar ons by Kerslig matriek geskryf het. Gestudeer het vir ons matriekeksamens. Ons kom van 'n verlede af, waar ons emmers gebruik het. Baie van ons het wegbeweeg van die wrede verlede. En ons is nou by die punt, waar ons waardigheid as mense gerespekteer word. En dit is wat belangrik is. As mense, ons waardigheid nie gerespekteer word nie, waar sal ons gaan? Hoe kan John Steenhuisen saam met my in 1981 gedroom het? Want ons werklikhede verskil. Ons werklikhede verskil. Dit wat my werklikheid in blikkies was, kan nie sy werklikheid in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal gewees het nie. Daar bestaan nie dieselfde werklikheid vir mense wat in apartheid gebenefit het en vir ons wat deur apartheid geleef het net om te bestaan, om die dag van môre te kan sien. En dit is die rede waarom ek sê, agbare president, ons ken die werklikheid van Tintswalo. En ons ervaar die werklikheid van Tintswalo, want ons weet waarvanaf sy kom. Daarom kan ons anders 'n beter toekoms probeer aanbied, omdat ons weet wat was die verlede, waarvandaan ons gekom het. Gewoonlik raak ek nie deel van julle se baklei nie, want ek glo parlement moet ten alle tye probeer om vir almal te akkommodeer. Maar dit is baie hartseer as jy uitgaan en mense wat baat gevind het by hierdie regering, sê die president lieg. Ek plaas dit as 'n aanhalingstekens. Ek sê weer, my werklikheid is nie jou werklikheid nie. Moet nie my werklikheid ontken, omdat jy jou werklikheid beleef nie. Elke een van ons weet waarvanaf ons kom. My familie bly vandag nog in die villages van die Ooskaap. En so ons weet, watter verbeteringe, as ons langs die pad afry Koffiebaba toe, sien ons al die huise wat gebou is vir die mense, waar daar voorheen geen huise was nie. So hierdie werklikheid wat ek ervaar, is my werklikheid. En die werklikheid wat Tintswalo ervaar, is haar werklikheid. So president, gaan voort met die goeie werk. En waar ons foute maak, sal ons dit aanspreek. Jy voel jammer vir Auntie Fatima, wat nog kan samosas maak. Wat van die kinders van Palestina, wat elke dag doodgemaak word en wat jy regverdig. Wat van die kinders van Palestina wat elke dag doodgemaak word en wat jy regverdig. Wat jy voel Israel het die reg om homself te verdedig teen kinders, teen weerlose vroue, teen weerlose mense. Die werklikheid wat ons as Suid-Afrikaners ervaar. Elke een ervaar 'n verskillende werklikheid. So laat ons hiervan afgaan en weet, 30 jaar na demokrasie, het ons nog steeds 'n hoop om die ongeregtigheid van 360 jaar uit te wis. Met daardie woorde, Speaker, sal ek nie teruggaan na my speech toe nie. Ek wil net een punt lig. Kan ons asseblief vroue toegang tot land gee, sodat ons as vroue kan wys dat ons 'n verskil kan maak waar ons is. Ten spyte van geslagsgeweld, ten spyte van mishandeling, ten spyte van die feit dat ons as leiers die polarisasie aanvoer, omdat ons net hier staan en mekaar aanvaar en nie begin bou aan 'n gesamentlike Suid-Afrikaanse identiteit nie. Baie dankie.
Honorable members, I thank the Honorable Deputy Chair of the NCOP. I now invite the Honorable Groenewald to address us.
Honorable Speaker.
Order, honorable members, Honorable Groenewald is on the floor. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, through you to the Honorable President. Achtbare President, u is nou 6 jaar die president van Suid-Afrika. Maar is baie duidelik dat u in hierdie 6 jaar 'n kleinserige president geword het. Suid-Afrika is nie geseënd met baie wêreldkampioene nie. U het die Springbokke geluk gewens en 'n paar ander goeie prestasies op wêreldvlak, maar u het nagelaat om vir Driekus du Plessis 'n wêreldkampioen geluk te wens. Dis kleinserigheid van u, want hy het eintlik gesê en kritiek uitgespreek wat die meeste mense van Suid-Afrika weet, maar blykbaar weet u dit nie. Nou ek wil vir Driekus du Plessis in hierdie parlement sê, baie geluk met jou wêreldtitel. Dis harde werk, baie dissipline en hard oefen. Honorable President, it is just natural.
Okay, Honorable Member, I'm sorry, Honorable Groenewald, please take a seat. Honorable Member, what is your point of order? Use your mic, please. Okay, they will bring a mic to you.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Honorable Member, yes?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I could hear the Afrikaans that was said by the Deputy Chairperson of NCOP. But I can't hear these Afrikaans. So we are requesting to get the gadgets for translation. It's quite important for us to hear.
Honorable Member, thank you very much for alerting us to the fact that you don't, but there are gadgets on your chairs. Thank you very much. Order! Honorable members, whoa, stelte alsjeblieft. Continue, Honorable Groenewald.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think it's just natural that the President will look over his term, and I want to say today to him, Honorable President, what is your legacy? What's your legacy as President of South Africa? And therefore we must go and look at the real facts. And if we go and look at the economy, we will see that when you became the President in 2018,
the growth rate, the economic growth rate, was 1.3%. Last year, it was 0.9%. So under your leadership, the economy just retreated backwards, causing havoc for the people of South Africa. We had a meeting with you as leaders on SCOM, and you yourself said 20 years ago, SCOM was seen as one of the best electricity utilities in the world. Who destroyed SCOM? The ANC destroyed SCOM. You were in charge of the war room to end load shedding. You failed. When you became president in 2018, the local currency against the dollar was nothing else than 11 Rand 55. Yesterday, it was 18 Rand 92. That's under your leadership. And if you go and look at the JSE and the loss of 22% in US dollars, while if you, for instance, look at the NASDAQ 100, they gained 147% under your term as leader, and the S&P 500 gained 75%. Those are the realities. If you go and look at the unemployment rate, when you became the president, the unemployment rate was 24%. It is now 32%. If you go and look at the youth, since you became president, and over the years, it increased with 20%, where the unemployment rate for the young people, the youth, at this moment is actually 64%. I want to talk about corruption. Honorable Chairperson, or Speaker, the President himself said that the ANC is accused number one when it comes to corruption. And I said, well, that's what the President said. And I said to yourself, but you are number one of accused number one. And now you have a number two who's also accused of corruption, but nothing happens. What happened with corruption in South Africa? The fact is that your Secretary General, Fikile Mabula, he said, okay. Fikile Mbalula, he said that they lied to protect the former president in terms of corruption. They misused, the ANC misused its position to defend and to protect the previous president. Honorable President, if you look up at the wall there, you will see there's a banner of Parliament oversight and accountability. There was no accountability. There was no oversight. And it comes to you as well as the next president after Zuma. When they came to the Pala issue, it was this ANC in Parliament who protected you. Why? You said you did nothing wrong. Why didn't you come forward and be accountable to the people of South Africa? I want to quote what the Archbishop, Bishop Stanley Makgoba said. He said, and I quote, "It is frightening to realize that as a society, we've become so worn down by lies, corruption, and incompetence that we're no longer interested in finding out the truth. We've been captured by lies." Close quote. I want to talk about crime in South Africa. Of the 10th in the world, 3rd in Africa, because of mafia-style criminal networks and organized crime syndicates. The murder rate when you became the president was 35 per 100,000 of the population. It is now 45 per 100,000 of the population. U agbare president het in New York ontken dat daar so iets is soos plaasmoorde in Suid-Afrika. Ek moes 'n paar debatte met u gevoer het nadat u minstens erken het dat daar wel plaasmoorde is. En u het daarom 'n mate daarvan gesê dat u dit veroordeel. Agbare president, ons sê ons is almal gelyk voor die reg. My vraag is, wat het gebeur in Groblersdal? Die agbare minister van polisie en die agbare minister van justisie gaan woon 'n gewone hofsaak by waar daar besluit moet word of daar byl gegee gaan word of nie. Het hulle nie werk om te doen nie? Hoekom gaan hulle soontoe? Hulle gaan soontoe want hulle het 'n politieke motief. En daardie motief is om die voorsittende beampte te intimideer. Daar word nou van 3 jong mense verwag om te gerapporteer het. Hulle het gerapporteer. Ek het persoonlik 'n klag gelê teen Julius Malema in 22 sowel as in 23 waar hy uitings maak van shoot to kill. And the revolutionary must not be scared or afraid to kill. Die klagtes is gelê. Hoekom word hy nie gearresteer nie? Dat hy ook gaan aansoek doen, verborg. U is besig onder u leierskap om ongelykhede te skep. Hierdie manne het hulle self gaan oorgee. Hulle is geregtig om borg te kry. Ek wil praat oor hongersnood. Agbare president, u departement van gesondheid sê dat ongeveer meer as 15,000 kinders sterf jaarliks in Suid-Afrika. En 1/3 van daardie kinders sterf as gevolg van honger. Dit beteken 10,000 kinders sterf basies jaarliks weens honger. In KwaZulu-Natal, noord van Durban, is daar kinders wat sand eet sodat hulle net kan voel hulle het iets in hulle maag. But you, Honorable President, you have a plane named Inquasi, and I want to say that there's also a restaurant in that plane, the Inquasi restaurant, where you wine and dine at a rate of 24,000 rand per person. So you wine and dine for 24,000 rand per person in the Inquasi restaurant, while children of South Africa are dying because of hunger. You, the Commander-in-Chief, did you investigate? If you did, what is the result? And if you did not investigate, why not? Because that means that you don't feel for the hungry people of South Africa. I want to say, and I again want to quote what the Archbishop said. He said, "Meanwhile, as politicians begin to realize they may not be in power after the next election, their deception, scams, and fraud grow more blatant by the day as they grow hungrier and hungrier for the ill-gotten proceeds of power. They walk shamelessly and brazenly with their dirty feet through every aspect of our South African lives." Close quote. I want to say again, with their dirty feet through every aspect of our South African lives. The message is clear, Honourable President. It's time to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now invite the Honourable Minister of Human Settlements to address the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Greetings to the Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, presiding officers, cabinet colleagues, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen. I just can't believe that, Honourable Groenewald, you could stand here in a democratic South Africa and defend what happened in Groblersdal. Apartheid and hoisting of apartheid symbols, shame on you. Babu Shabisa, The worst thing you could have done to us is to remind what IFP has done to us, those who stayed in township. IFP was a symbol of mobilization of tribal and also the death of many who lived in the townships closer to hostels and could not travel with the trains. Despite that, in this democratic government, this ANC government has made sure that even the hostel dwellers, we do upgrade their hostels and make them a residential area where families can live, because we believe that it is by doing so that we will build a reconstructed South Africa, but a South Africa that is reconciled, that is a better nation for all, despite the past. So it's the worst thing that we can do today. When the ANC government came into power 30 years ago, it undertook to build a new country that is based on equality, fairness, and prosperity for all. Fundamentally, the ANC understood that moving away from apartheid did not only mean protection from unjust laws, but it also meant breaking all the pillars of apartheid, of which spatial configuration was one. Inspired by the Freedom Charter that stated that the new South Africa that the African National Congress sought to build, there shall be houses, security, and comfort. Our government adopted policies that allowed for the provision of houses for the poorest of the poor. Thus far, our government has already restored the dignity of many people, and it will continue to do so by providing them with dignified shelter. Our government further understood that a house is made of walls and beams, but a home is built with love and dreams. It is for this reason that our housing policy has shifted since 1996, so that we could provide the majority of the people in the country with sustainable human settlements that are closer to economic opportunities and social amenities, which enables them to fulfill the dreams in homes filled with love, health, safety, and happiness. Mr. President, in your State of the Nation address last week, you narrated a story of a democratic child, Dintswalo. That Dintswalo's formative years were spent in a house provided by the state, one of millions of houses built to shelter the poor. Indeed, under the leadership of the NC government, the number of formal household dwellings grew from 5.2 million in 1996 to 15.8 million in 2022. Households living in traditional dwellings have likewise significantly reduced since 1996, with over 1 million fewer households living in traditional dwellings in 2022, as compared with what we stated in 1996. Whilst there can be no doubt that government has built millions of houses through the RDP program, it has also built thousands of units of social housing, rectified housing defects, provided housing material to individual households, and contributed significantly to the cases of emergencies and disasters. Honourable members, of the 10.6 million additional households now living in formal dwellings, 4.8 million households were provided by this government. In terms of gender, out of those, we have also provided, in terms of the state houses that have been provided, 1.9 million households led by women as beneficiaries. For example, last year, Mr. President, we handed over a newly built house to Mme Tlhabane, ko Belabela. Ga re bolela le Mme Tlhabane, o bile a re botsa a re, ha e sale a dula ka hara mokhukhu for 15 years. O ikwa thabile gagolo ga bona tsena ka hara ntlo, a leboga mmuso wa ANC, a leboga le hore ka nnete re mo file boikhutso le gore a kgonne go thekwa a tshireletsegile. Last week, Mr. President, you called on all of us to join the fight against gender-based violence and femicide, which has been characterized as a second pandemic in our country. The provision of houses to women has gone a long way in helping women fight GBV. A woman who owns a house and has the security of tenure does not have to be trapped in an abusive relationship that often ends in femicide. For this reason, we have also intensified our title deeds program and to ensure security of tenure to provide economic asset to the beneficiaries. We handed over a title deed to Mme Mabel Sekgopa in a city of Tshwane, Ga-Rankuwa under Mawiga. It was a very moving ceremony where we had Mme Abolela Are. I finally ke thola title deed mo ile reng ke a tseba gore gona motho tla ntšhang ka rantlu ke tla dula mo ke ikwa ke khutshitse le gona ke tseba gore batlogolo ba ka le bana ba ka ba tla tseba gore ke mo ke dutšeng gona. Similarly, when we handed over a title deed to a 100-year-old Miss Prakasa, she said it was an exciting moment for her to receive the title deed as a homeowner at that age. She was moved to the house 40 years ago under Group Areas Act movement. This is our restoration of dignity and ensuring that women who could not own title deeds under apartheid government have a say and have properties in their hands. Mr. President, such stories as this one are a clear demonstration that we are not passive observers of our history, but we are the authors of this history. Not only have we provided housing to women, but we have also embarked on a women empowerment program through procurement processes. You will recall, Mr. President, that when you marked National Women's Day in 2020, you announced government's plan to expand women's access to economic opportunities by setting 40% aside for public procurement for women-owned businesses. For our part, as Human Settlements Department, including our entities in all our grants, we have made this a policy. I can report today, Mr. President, under this program and your vision, that not only are we talking about the past in what we have done, but in this administration, we have ensured that 40% out of the 13.2 billion is set aside in this financial year for women-owned companies. And as we speak, already 1.7 billion has been spent on their companies, and we do believe we will reach our 40%. This is instance where you find Limpopo and Mpumalanga. The entire budget of HSDG in building houses is spent on women contractors. And I must say they deliver, Mr. President, within budget and in record time and quality houses. In 2020, the State of the Nation address, Mr. President, you spoke about social housing program to build rental housing for low-income families, which could leverage as much as 9 billion for private investment in the construction of 37,000 rental apartments. Again, I am pleased to report that working in partnership with Infrastructure South Africa, which was launched under this administration, the Social Housing Regulatory Agency has increased the pipeline of social housing projects, some of which have been completed, as also others are in halfway. Just here in Western Cape, 3 projects, Goodwood Station, worth 464 million, with 1,055 units, has been completed. Maitland Mews, valued at 94 million, with 204 units completed. 8 projects in Gauteng. Riverside Mews, Phase 3 and 4, valued at 531 million, will be completed in October this year. Lufereng, valued at 184 million with 407 units completed. Forgeville, valued at 105 million with 258 units completed. There are many more. You go to KwaZulu-Natal, we've got Hospital Street social housing, which is sitting at 54%, Bridge City, which is sitting at 78%, and also in Northern Cape, Hull Street, which is sitting at 40% to the value of 144. Mpumalanga with KwaDokuhle, 193 million worth of a project, 492 units at 32%. This is the work that we continue under your leadership, Mr. President. Yesterday, I had an engagement with CBOs and NGOs and COs here in the Western Cape, appealing to the national government to protect and provide services for them. They narrated how they live in a city that does not care about them. Similarly, I went to Nomzamo community. They narrated the condition they live in, where rubbish is not collected, sewer is running in the street. Yet they were reminding me to say, Minister, don't listen to them when they say they govern better, they rule better. It's a fallacy, it's for the few. With regards to our policy, we committed to them that we will change our policies and principles and programs to ensure that if a government or a province or a municipality does not care about our people, we'll come in as national government and show that we care, as we continue to do. Mr. President, the draft paper, white paper...
Honourable Member.
Thank you very much. As I conclude, as we say, we can never allow people who say to us, let us not talk about apartheid, because 30 years later, shockingly, the same people are supporting apartheid Israel under us. Mr. President, our policies are geared to help South Africa, and that's why we say, with the work that we have done, the foundation that has been laid, we continue to provide services for all, not discriminatory, but this is a government that can be trusted, and vote for ANC.
Our next speaker is going to be Honorable Labuskaghni.
Honourable Speaker, Mr. President, Members of Parliament, honoured guests, and the most important people, fellow South Africans. From our history, it is evident that we are resilient people, able to adjust and survive even in the extreme difficult times and circumstances. However, Mr. President, after your 5-year term of empty promises, you and your ANC government are certainly testing our resilience. From constant load shedding, forever increasing violent crimes, high levels of unemployment, especially the youth, loss of investment due to corruption, poor management, and cadre deployment, all of us, it has ultimately contributed to our critical economic situation. A government's main task is to create an environment for economic growth and opportunities, as well as to provide service delivery through effective policies and legislation, none of which you have been able to achieve in your term. In fact, Mr. President, you have done the exact opposite. If we take only but one example, the NHI bill, which has just been bulldozed through Parliament with your ANC majority, will actually provide people with less health care, specifically affecting the poorest of the poor. It is clear as day that the NHI bill is unconstitutional and unimplementable. This has been pointed out not only by the Democratic Alliance, but also by organizations such as Business for South Africa and Business Unity South Africa. Even medical associations such as the South African Medical Association has warned that we will have a complete skill drain of medical practitioners should this bill be implemented. Mr. President, it is clear that the NHI bill will be the final nail in South Africa's economy and will completely collapse an already underfunded and decimated public health sector. Despite passing this bill, South Africans still do not even know how it will be funded. The only conceivable way would be to increase taxes on an already overtaxed population. One only has to look at the troubles our public healthcare system is facing now to know that this bill is nothing more than a cheap political tool for the ANC to try and save itself from an inevitable losing its majority. Almost all public health facilities are understocked and underfunded, with many not having the necessary equipment to complete life-saving operations. In fact, most public hospitals do not even meet the minimum criteria for certification by the Office of Health Standard Compliance. Some public hospitals do not even have computers or electricity at times, with doctors having to operate with cell phone torches. In some hospitals, patients are pulled up flights of stairs to the operating room because the lifts either don't work from lacking of service or because they have not exempt from load shedding. How can we possibly implement this bill when we have the shining beacons of maladministration and corruption, such as Livingston Hospital in the Eastern Cape, Palonomi in the Free State, and Rahima Musa in Gauteng? We have a massive shortage of doctors and nurses in the country. Just the other week, we heard how approximately 800 doctors who recently graduated and finished community service are sitting at home without a job because the ANC government cannot fund them. All the while, we pay millions of rands a year for Cuban doctors to come to South Africa. Even your own Minister of Health admitted that there is no funding for these posts. Where are we supposed to fund the NHA from when we can't even put doctors in our hospitals? The budget implications for the NHA bill are enormous. Again, one of your own, the Minister of Finance, has stated that there is no money to implement NHI. If your own minister has admitted this, then why, Mr. President, are you playing with the people's lives for the sake of cheap politicking? It is time you play open cards with us.
all admit that NHI is not financially feasible and put business and medical associations and the people of South Africa at ease. But I can go on. The feedback received during the public participation processes of the NHI bill was not carefully considered by neither the National Assembly nor the National Council of Provinces. Public participation is one of the core elements what makes our constitution and lawmaking one of the strongest around the world. Mr. President, the DA wrote to you requesting you to refer the NHI bill back to Parliament as it will not pass constitutional muster. Both BUSA and BSA have written to you requesting not to sign the bill. You cannot just stick your head in the sand and pretend these very real issues do not exist. It is prescribed in the Constitution that you must refer a bill back to Parliament if there are constitutional concerns. But it looks like you would rather pander to your ANC colleagues than to your constitutional obligations. You have had your chance, but your time is now up, Mr. President. The DA will fight for the achievement of realistic universal health care and will ensure that public facilities are strengthened to improve service delivery and accountability without detrimentally financially burdening our country, as the unconstitutional NHI bill will do. Under a DA-anchored government, no person will be excluded from accessing quality health care. Under a DA-anchored government, there will be a realization for progressive rights as enshrined in Section 27 of the Constitution.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed to Honorable Malachi.
Thobela Speaker sa National Assembly, Mopresidente wa rena, Deputy President wa rena, Chairperson ya NCOP. I am not going to greet the murderers who contributed to the killing of the people of Palestine. I am not going to greet the IFP, a political party that was funded by right-wing murderers who have killed the people of Thokoza, KZN, Sebokeng, and many other parts of South Africa. The people who worked against the people's power. President, the story of Tintswalo is a story of hope, reflecting on opportunities, possibilities created by the breakthrough of democracy, touching and transforming the lives of people from as far as Ngezingi, Ndlomo, in the deep rural areas. Honorable members, we also acknowledge that there are many young people who are not employed or in education or training programs. Their socio-economic challenges must be addressed urgently. They also want to be Tintswalos. 30 years into democracy, our challenge to ensure that we sustain the areas of progress to make sure the people of South Africa continue to have access to clear electricity, water, sanitation, waste collection, and other basic services. South Africans want a consistent, effective policy implementation led by the ANC. Despite the technical glitches impacting on NEFSAS, over 4.1 million university students and 2.4 million TVET students have been supported by NEFSAS since 1994. Those are the achievements. President, just to remind them that in 2024, after a clear outcry that NEFSAS must also try to assist those that are in the bracket of 350,000 who were not funded before, the ANC-led government is committed to assist to fund those that have been missing in that area. Because we understand, as the ANC, that there are people who were too rich to access NSFAS but too poor to afford education. President, we also welcome the 1.6 million presidential employment program opportunities created for youth placement in various sectors to gain skills and experience. Digital technology has created many opportunities as the youth earn income through online platforms, building their own creative careers. For example, President, through the influence of the ANC-led government, our local DJs are able to showcase their talent and promote their music internationally. President, in the previous financial year, the NYDA empowered 2,220 youth-owned enterprises through the financial interventions, which took form through the NYDA grant programs and NYDA voucher programs. Through these financial business interventions, 6,796 jobs were created for young people employed by youth-owned businesses. Those are achievements of the ANC. Through the mentorship access to the market and business management training programs, the NYDA provided 34,209 young people with support. There is a direct relationship, President, between funding of youth-owned enterprises and the creation of jobs. One of the most significant achievements was the removal of work entry experience and entry-level employment by government. We call upon the private sector to follow the instruction of the President, your funders, DA. Mr. President, we welcome that the UIF-funded labor activation program, LAB, that seeks to support employment and the training of the youth. We know the intention is to create 2 million work opportunities in the immediate future. We urge the Department of Employment and Labor, and supported by Treasury, to roll out this program without further delay. President, the following program must urgently be fast-tracked. We must reskill the youth to respond to the economic demand of the country, the challenging world of intelligence and digital transformation. We need a massive higher education through digital transformation to ensure that we target and make sure that we meet the National Development Plan target. We shall continue, when we come back in the 7th administration, to open the doors of learning and teaching. Siyabuya. President, UNISA and other universities during COVID-19 demonstrated such capabilities, which developed the state-of-the-art specialized universities and TVET colleges, aligned with our industrial strategy and the capabilities of the various districts. Our higher education institutions do not only contribute to the skill development, but also a high impact on local economic development in areas where the institution of higher learning. Higher education institutions should also be aligned with our mega infrastructure projects of development. President, it is only the African National Congress-led government that was able to break the cycle of poverty in many families, and one of the key achievements were delivered by the ANC. Today, a child of a domestic worker, a child of an informal worker, a child of an unemployed parent, today is a doctor, is an engineer, is a chartered accountant, is a pilot, is a CFO, is a CEO, and many other professions. It is only because of the ANC-led government in the past 30 years. It is clear, President, that even if they deny some in the DA are products, are minute in swallows, they know that they are products of the Inswallow program of the African National Congress. President, Premier Panyaza Lesuifu has demonstrated that provinces can also expand youth development programs through the Nasispani program. The presidential employment program should be doubled, and all provinces should follow the example of Gauteng, including the Western Cape. We must address the market dominance in the telecommunications sector. President, the youth of the country has long demanded a free data for all. And we know that when we come back, it shall be implemented. The global trends have shown that small business sector is the highest job creator supported by industrial economy.
As you conclude,
South Africa remains the most unequal country where the world is still controlled by the white male minorities, and that shall be restructured. We urgently call upon the restructuring of the economy so the economy of the country reflects the demographics of the country. We shall decisively address the land question for agricultural production and human settlements so that we address the asset inequalities. Thank you very much.
Honorable Olomisa.
Chairperson, Honorable President and Deputy President, and honorable members. Mr. President, the United Democratic Movement fully agrees with the sentiment that South Africa must be rebuilt, as you had indicated in your State of the Nation address. The UDM will give its perspective on this question, where I will have more time on the 2nd of March at the Gallagher Convention Center, when we will be launching our manifesto for 2024 national and provincial elections. Xa sisakha lendlu izawusikhumbuza ke mongameli ukuthi phaya eBhayibhileni umprofeti waGayi chapter 2 verse 3 and 4 uthi ngubani na osekhoyo apho sayikhumbulayo lendlu ngexesha yayisesebuqaqawuleni bayo niyibona njani ngoku. Sawubeka ke into ezifana nezondo commission uba ile damage yenzekileyo siphi ngoku. What I would like to raise with you, Mr. President, in the limited time I have, is the matter that you had last year instructed Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to attend to, which is the matter of the SATBVC state pensioners. Your public instruction created a legitimate expectation within the community of thousands upon thousands of ex-civil servants and their families that their complaints will at long last be attended to. Mr. President, a year has lapsed and nothing has happened to fulfill your instruction. Aside from a meeting I had with the Minister on the 22nd of March 2023, that created some expectation with the Pensioners Committee, nothing further happened. As you might be aware, the SATBVC pensioners have now resorted to a legal route to seek to effect your instruction, which will take time and resources. Yet National Treasurer, GEPF, and the PIC did not go to court to consult with anyone before they used pensioners' monies to bail out SOEs and funded BE transactions to the tune of billions of rands. I would therefore strongly recommend an alternative solution from your office, and that is that an independent body with chartered accountants and tax experts be mandated to handle the matter with subpoena powers to clear the house, that the erstwhile asset managers like Sanlam and others, the GEPF, the PIC, and National Treasury be made to give answers to this independent body, with its primary goal to clear as many claims as possible, as soon as possible, because the consequences of our decisions affect people's lives. Mr. President, as some of these pensioners have passed away in 2023 and others long before that, who did not get to enjoy the benefits of their labors. Omakhulu notatomkhulu balentwazana kuthiwa nguThintswalo bafuna imali yabo ababeyicontribute ku-pension abalwinani banikeni imali yabo abantu niyeke uthatha imali ze-pensions niyokubeef up ii-BEE companies ningabanikanga sanutya yonke into leni a similar scenario is playing out amongst ex-mine workers who had been promised attention during former President Mbeki and Zuma's tenures, who had been retrenched during or using the so-called blue card system. The UDM proposes that a task...
As you conclude...
No, the next 5 minutes. I'll pass them in the 5 minutes. That's not the 3 minutes.
It will be 3 minutes. No, Honorable Mamasa. Look at the watch on your right.
Obvious. Kodwa ke sithi ke kuyo yonke loo nto izinto zasezimayini nabasemahlabathini nabase-Rustenburg mabanikwe imali zabo abanye basemahlabathini bekuthiwe bazawunikwa inantsika
The time is up.
Sathetha mawodini thulani amasela la.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Honorable Seropen.
Thank you very much, Mr. House Chair. Mr. President, in November 2017, you promised, if you were elected leader of your party, that you would implement a 10-point New Deal. You echoed Franklin D. Roosevelt, and you promised to pull millions of South Africans out of poverty and into the mainstream economy. We stand here 6.5 years later, and that landscape, that utopian landscape you painted then, has not come to pass. What we instead have is the shadow of unfulfilled promises and a deepening economic crisis. And this is because of the failures of your government, particularly in job creation. You broke the very first promise that you made to this country. And the young people bear the brunt of this crisis. 70% of young people aged 15 to 24 have been unable to secure jobs. And the government's stranglehold on the business environment has choked the ability for this economy to create jobs. Unemployment has surged from 20% in 1994, since we hear a lot in this debate about the progress since 1994. So let's look at some progress. 20% unemployment in 1994. We now have 32.9% unemployment in 2024. When you include people who have given up looking for work because they cannot find a job, that unemployment rate is an alarming 42.4%. Now, to add insult to injury, instead of rectifying our economic mistakes, the ANC has shifted the burden onto a shrinking tax base and plans to do so again later this month in the budget. Slow economic growth has created a tax-to-GDP ratio of 25%, which is one of the highest in the world. South Africans have one of the highest tax-to-GDP ratios in the world. South Africans are overburdened with tax. And these citizens pay much more tax compared not to wealthy countries, but to developing and middle-income countries. The citizens, through tax, are paying a huge financial price to fund the ANC's failures. Now, government's failure to manage public debt has pushed us towards a fiscal crisis, and 20% of all government revenue is now dedicated to servicing debt. Not healthcare, not police, not teachers, debt. And this means that we have limited resources for investment into infrastructure and essential services. National debt is now over 5.2 trillion rand. And South Africa cannot go on like this. And in the debate today so far, we've heard the ANC double down on BE and cadre deployment, which shows us who their true constituency is. It is not the millions of South Africans looking for work or looking for opportunity. Their real constituencies are a handful of cadre deployees and a few thousand BEE billionaires. And their entire system, as they've debated today so far, shows us who they're going to take care of should they attempt to win another election. So South Africa cannot go on like this. And thankfully, every piece of information shows us, Mr. President, that you are the outgoing president. And we will not have to face, if the voters make the right choices, we will not face a green-red coalition of doom, but we will have a blue coalition for change. Now, let me tell you what the blue coalition for change, a DA-led government, will do. I see the ANC is heckling a lot when we mention the Coalition for Change. It is precisely because they're terrified that they're all going to be prosecuted for corruption and maladministration whenever we mention the change of government. But this blue coalition of change will get the economic engine revving again. It is essential to do so to lift millions of people out of poverty. And we will do so by overhauling labor regulations that limit job growth. We will make sure that young people and older people who have been locked out of the economy get skills through apprenticeships and development programs. And we will boldly put an end, finally, to apartheid, classification of race and employment equity and preferential procurement. We will no longer use those outdated and crass categories to classify people. Our focus will be on meritocracy and non-racialism to make sure that diversity and merit thrive. On the tax system, we will commit to no new taxes, unlike what the finance minister will be announcing in a month from now. We will also prevent hidden tax increases and to make sure the poor are taken care of, who are struggling with the cost of living crisis. The ANC MPs who earn all more than R1 million here love to heckle about the poor. None of them are in that basket. But for the poor out there, we will expand the zero-rated VAT food basket so that you can buy chicken, you can buy essential nutrients, and you can feed your families. And lastly, we will make sure that everyone pays their fair share of taxes by ensuring that SARS has the capabilities. We will undo the gutting of SARS under state capture. We'll also rescue public finances from the fiscal cliff. We will stabilize public debt. We will make sure that we don't waste government money, unlike the hecklers on the side over here. And we will end this obsessive culture of bailouts of state-owned enterprises. And I'm looking forward to the Appropriations Committee on Wednesday because I believe SAA has lost another 700 million rand in the last year. And we look forward to taking you on bailouts there. We will also rescue small businesses, and we will make sure we will build an export-orientated economy that makes sure that we rescue South Africa from this economic calamity. This is not going to come about through any New Deal or New Dawn. It will not come about through any New Deal or New Dawn. And as we look back, we've gone from a New Deal to a New Dawn to a false dawn, and now to Ramageddon. So the choice for our country is clear. We can't carry on with unfulfilled promises. Thank you to the ANC. Your time is up, as mine now ends as well. But we will get a better tomorrow through a blue coalition of change that rescues South Africa.
Up. Honorable Zulu.
naye lo Dinswalo osuka la, Honorable Speaker, naye ukwazile ukuthi azofika la ngoba samlwela ukuthi azakwazi uDinswalo lo azoma la esitikini akwazi ukukhuluma. Nawe Dinswalo noma uhleli ngale walwelwa sethi uyafuna or awufuni. Chairperson, Honorable Speaker, she's still here in the House. Your Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, Your Excellency Deputy President Paul Mashatile, my colleagues, members of the executive who are here today, honorable members of parliament, nani nonke emakhaya, ngicela ukubingelela nina ikakhulukazi ngoba simela ngenxa yenu. Sila sikhuluma nje sikhulumela imisebenzi esiyenzayo siyenzela nina. Silanje ngoba sathunywa yini kusukela ngo1994 nathi kithi nawa amandla hambani niyosisebenzela hambani niyolungisa impilo zethu hambani niyobonisa ukuthi iSouth Africa entsha igaba khona ingaba possible. Ngibonge kakhulu Chairperson ukuthi nginikezwe leli thuba iorganization yami engihamba ngiziqhayisa ngayo iAfrican National Congress enginikeze lethuba lokuthi namhlanje ke ngithi qabaqaba kancane ngokuthi iAfrican National Congress yenzeni isazowenzani masiqhubeka ngomsebenzi ozayo. Ngimela Honorable President and Deputy President ngumama kaDinswalo ngu-auntie kaDinthwalo, ngu-grandmother kaDinthwalo, ngugogo kaDinthwalo. La phakathi kwethu sinabomkhulu, sinabomalume, sinobaba bakaDinthwalo, laba abazinikezela long before 1994 ukuthi ukhona uDinthwalo ozophila, abaqala ukumenzela imisebenzi ngo-1994, kodwa ngicela ukusho ukuthi baqala ukwenza lokho long before 1994. Ngicela ukuthi ngithi, Mr. President, ukhulume ngoDinthwalo, uthe ungakaqedi nokukhuluma ngaye usesela in the house. Baqala ke abanye lengaphandle bafuna ukubonisa iSouth Africa ukuthi akekho uDinthwalo lo okhuluma ngaye. Ngifuna ukuthi mina namhlanje umlayezo engiwusa kuDinthwalo ngithi kuye, you are not alone in this journey. Reach out for help, share your story and connect with others who have faced similar challenges like you, but also reach out to the government of the African National Congress, whose sole purpose of existence is to change you into a better Dinthwalo. I want to say, abo Dinthwalo abaningi lapha ngaphandle, you are worthy, you are capable, and you are deserving of a better future. Ngicela ukuthi kuthiwe namhlanje ngini ngusweeper, kodwa ke anginikwanga umshanyelo. Ngoba if benginikewe umshanyelo ngabe ngithathe wonke lamazwi avela ngapha ngawashanyela kancane kancane ngaze ngawakhipha ngomnyango. Akodwa kaninikanga umshanyelo. Next time ngicela ninginike umshanyelo. Ngicela ukuthi ngithi kini ke ningalaleli uSteenhuisen with his lot. Don't listen to people whose sole purpose of existence is to demoralize you. They tell you nothing has happened since 1994. Don't listen to Honorable Steenhuisen and his lot, who don't listen to nobody but himself and his lot. Don't listen to the so-called moonshoot. Don't listen to pessimism. Don't listen to any of those people who want to tell you that nothing has happened since 1994. I want to say today, Mr. President, we are here because we are a government that cares. We are here because many of my colleagues have spoken about the past of where we came from and where we are. I do want to remind you, Chairperson and honorable members, that we, those who struggled to bring this South Africa to where it is today, at the time that we were struggling, we thought it would not be possible. We thought democracy would not come. We thought we were lost and would die outside. And those who were in prison and all, they thought it wasn't going to be possible. But what made it possible was the commitment of all South Africans, irrespective of race, color, or creed, who stood up and said, apartheid, like Israel apartheid, will not survive. Will not survive because many people commit themselves to changing the lives of people. Honorable Chairperson, let me remind the naysayers and those with self-inflicted amnesia what we inherited when we came into office. The destruction of the family unit and communities torn apart by slave trade and migrant labor system, which we still suffer today. Apartheid policies that impoverished individuals, created spatial poverty traps, and negatively impacted on the human capital formation of black people in particular. A fragmented social welfare system based on race, gender, and geographical location. Welfare policies, legislation, and programs were inequitable, inappropriate, and ineffective in addressing poverty and basic human rights. And I would like to say, Mr. President, as a Minister of Social Development, it pains me to walk up and down the streets of Cape Town and see the number of people who are homeless. It pains me to see the DA talking so much just 200 meters from here. walk down the street, Mr. President, I'll invite you one of the days. We walk and we see how many of our people are languishing in poverty outside on the streets of Cape Town. And I say to the people of South Africa, we care even for those who are out there because they are part and parcel of ourselves. We care for them. This government of the Western Cape that pretends like it is taking care of our people, just walk out there and see what it is. Mr. President, in your State of the Nation address, you outlined the remarkable journey we have traversed and the massive gains we have achieved under this government for all South Africans. And let me tell you, as you sit here and look at me, I don't look at any South African from any point of view other than the fact that this is a South African who needs assistance. This is a South African who needs to pay attention by the government of the African National Congress. And so what have we done since then? Ngiyambona nosoli ukhona lapha kathukweni. Mina naye usoli sithathene lapha NCOP. Ngiyabezwa nje Osteinhazen namhlanje sekuyibo abakhuluma ngama grants. Impela nina yini enikhuluma ngama grants nina ebenisitshela ukuthi the economy is not capable of paying the grants. Yini esenikhuluma ngama grants ngoba siya kuma election. Yini ebenisitshela nisasitshela namanje ukuthi if the economy doesn't grow, asikwazi ukubhadala ama grant. Let me tell you, we have been paying the grants from 1994 to date. Even when the economy is not doing very well, we have stood up and said, we shall be with the people of South Africa. Whether the economy is not doing well or not doing well, it remains our responsibility and our capability to make sure that those that have absolutely nothing, at least we can give them something and help them to lift themselves up. Nina, niti, give the men a rod to fish. And I'm saying, where's that river? Where's that fish? And kulumangai. Tina, we have the river, we have the fish. What we have done, Honorable Speaker, improve access to sustainable livelihoods and entrepreneurial opportunities through grant funding and capacity building of civil society organizations, progressively expanded social protection coverage from 2.4 million in 1994 to a whopping 28 million to support those who cannot support themselves. We are currently providing regular income support each month without fail to more than 4 million older persons, about 1 million adults with disabilities, and 160,000 children with disabilities. More than 13 million children from poor households receive child support grant, while a further 237 children are supported through our foster grant. Provide financial support to the tune of 8.2 billion rand to non-profit organizations. Increase the number of children benefiting from early childhood development. And Mr. President, you spoke so eloquently about the ECD, about early childhood development, because that didn't swallow. The first one that we have of the 30 years, the next didn't swallow of the next 30 years will be very different even from the one of the current 30 years. We have created 500,000 employment opportunities through expanded public works, addressed disproportionate impact of poverty on women through women empowerment, passed progressive pieces of legislation such as the Children's Act to ensure protection of children, intensified international collaboration with development and UN agencies such as UNICEF, UNDP, ILO on best practices, expanded access to care and support services for victims and survivors through the implementation of Pillar 4 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, capacitated the Gender Violence Command Center and the National Emergency Response Team. I also would like, Mr. President, to say we need to look no further than the 2023 National Senior Certificates results. Of the 897,775 grade 12 learners who wrote NSC, 543,780 full-time learners were social grant beneficiaries, with 62 out of 110 top-performing learners in different categories. And Mr. President, we do say today, sithinje kaba kaba, sisazobuya when we further explain during the budget speech, as well as the, thank you, Chairperson Nina Hambanyolala.
Now, thank you very much, honorable members. We will now have a lunch break and we'll come back at 13:30 or 1:30 p.m. And we'll leave in the following order: the Speaker, the President, Deputy President, and the rest of us. So, I'm told that the lunch arrangements are as follows. So please note that lunch will be on sale at the following venues: ground floor, David Bloomberg Hall; second floor, banqueting hall.